All right, it is 7:03 here in the East on this Wednesday, September 6, 2023. And we start this hour of Fox and Friends with this. The NFL season officially kicks off tomorrow night, and President Biden is diving into his own political playbook, launching a campaign ad blitz for his re-election. Here's a snippet.
Today, inflation is down to 3%, unemployment the lowest in decades. There's more to do, but President Biden is getting results that matter.
Yep, President Biden is targeting key battleground states, airing that ad in Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Michigan, as the Detroit Lions take on the Kansas City Chiefs Thursday night, which should be a really good game.
All right, the president once again touting economic wins, despite a Fox News poll revealing 52% of voters feel Biden has made the economy worse instead of better. And there was also that poll where he's neck and neck with Donald Trump. Then they announced this $25 million campaign ad.
That's right. You know, and with that Wall Street Journal ad, rather the poll, talking about how he's underwater on the economy. That's why, naturally, the White House is coming out with an ad that they're going to run all over the place. They're going to do a lot of streaming this time, a lot of digital stuff this time, trying to show that Joe Biden, despite what his critics say, has done a lot for the economy. In the ad, they say that he's fixed supply chains, he's fighting corporate greed, he's passing laws to lower the cost of medicine, a bunch of stuff to make him look good. They can talk about the economy because they can do something about the economy, but they can't do anything about his age because that is a fixed number, and just like everybody else, it's getting bigger every day. There's a new book out that came out yesterday. It's called The Last Politician by Franklin Foer. And in it, it talks about apparently the guy had unparalleled access.
2 years. For
2 years. He talked to the people who've been with Joe Biden for decades, his inner circle of advisors. One of the passages was asked about with our White House correspondent yesterday. It made a lot of headlines, but it's absolutely true. And nobody has walked this back yet from the White House. Here's Peter Doocy in the question and kind of an answer.
President Biden is the oldest president in U.S. history. Why does White House staff treat him like a baby?
No one treats the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief, like a baby.
So there's this book that says
that's ridiculous.
When staff walked back what sounded like a call for regime change in Russia, the president, quote, rather than owning his failure, he fumed to friends about how he was treated like a toddler.
We did see the excerpt, the context of the excerpt, and it seemed to be making the opposite overall point about how the value of his experience and wisdom resulted in rallying the free world against authoritarianism, which is important. We have seen this, you all have seen this, and passage of the most historic agenda in recent history in his handling of foreign policy.
She didn't answer the question. The passage is all about how Joe Biden said Putin, essentially regime change, guy can't remain in power. And so the White House immediately tried to mop it up. And Joe Biden said, look, they're babying me. Nobody babied John F. Kennedy.
This is the same guy who wrote the book, who yesterday we were talking about, who said, I wouldn't be shocked. He was on one of the Sunday shows. I would not be shocked if they choose a different candidate if Joe Biden doesn't make it to the final round.
But he was asked directly about that. He said, look, I expect him to run again, but I wouldn't be shocked because of his age. You saw him yesterday on the stage not know when to do after he gave someone a medal.
Oh, my gosh.
He did not know. He just left.
He just left. He left the stage and left the veteran on the stage. He was tearful because he was excited.
It's not even his age. It's the way he acts. He looks beyond his age. It's not every 80-year-old. There are 80-year-olds who can do that job. It doesn't seem like he's one of them, sadly, for him. Now, in terms of what he's going to do during an NFL game, I think it's kind of interesting. You mentioned that he can't do anything about the economy. He can do something about the economy. Not really. People are making their own decisions about the economy, and they're realizing that Bidenomics is not a message that works. The other thing that they're realizing, too, this is him just leaving the stage yesterday, and the ceremony's not even done yet.
It hasn't even begun, because right after he does this, then the man takes the podium. He says, let's start with the benediction.
Right. It's insane. On top of that, you have Donald Trump going to Iowa State. And he's going to go to the college game, and he's going to go to the West Point game. The president's going to go somewhere else. So he's going to tap into a legitimate football game with the former president of the United States is going to go to the Army-Navy game, which is going to be pretty impressive. For Joe Biden, his problem is this is the best he can do. And if he has to actually campaign, now that Labor Day is over,
right,
he has to campaign, this is going to be scary for him.
Well,
and his only hope is for Donald Trump to be stuck in a courtroom. And still, I can see Trump even rallying at night.
2/3 of the Democrats in that Wall Street Journal poll, so it was Wall Street Journal, right, that said they think he's too old. 2/3 of the Democrats.
And so that's the age thing. But going back to why they're talking all about the economy is the ad ends where they say that inflation is down to 3% and unemployment is the lowest in decades. So the White House is looking at the numbers, and these are the best numbers they've got, and they're reminding people because, you know, they've got good numbers, but for a lot of Americans, it just doesn't feel like the numbers are that good. Meanwhile, Stephen A. Smith was on with Sean last night and talked a little bit about the age thing. You know, the White House, every time you ask them about the age, they talk about something else. Here he is talking to Sean about a guy that old in this job.
In the case of Biden, clearly he doesn't seem to be as cogent and as lucid as we would like him to be. My bigger point was this. It is a disgrace for the Democratic Party to call themselves progressives when they're virtually begging an 82-year-old man at election time to run for re-election. That is the point that I was making. You're supposed to be progressive, right? You're supposed to be moving forward. You're supposed to be thinking forward. You're supposed to be being innovative and younger and all of this other stuff. And you're leaning on the hopes and the prayers of an 82-year-old who would be Joe Biden. He's 80 right now. He'd be going 81. He'll be 82 at the time of re-election if that were to happen. To depend on him is an indictment against the Democratic Party.
And with these blatant lies, for example, that look what he's doing to the deficit has doubled. Meanwhile, we have low job numbers. We're growing at 2%.
Interest
but
rates.
the deficit has doubled. And the interest rates that we're paying now on the debt equal the defense budget. So to sit up there on stage and say the jobs numbers are unemployment's okay. If you want to say we're growing 2%, okay. But you can't just go out and say you're cutting the deficit when it is doubled. And economists say in our history, we have never had a situation where the economy is growing and our deficit is doubling. And they can't quite figure it out. I'll tell you, figure it out. The spending bills that he passed, the rescue package, the Inflation Reduction Act, what he's done in between, these are all spending programs that are being spent right now. And it's money we're spending growing at 7%, our revenues at 4%.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.